Hello everyone, once again welcome back to our continuing professional development series on neurological disorders in children. I'm Dr. Presley D. Kharsati and I'm so glad to have you with me again. In our first session, we explored about autism spectrum disorder and Asperger syndrome, understanding their signs, behaviors and how schools can support these learners. Today, in Series 2, we'll focus on three more very important areas that are ADHD, specific learning disability, and intellectual disability. These conditions affect how children process information, how they learn, and how they interact with the world. Many of these children are intelligent, capable, and talented. They just learned differently. By the end of this session, you will be able to define ADHD, SLD, and intellectual disability in simple, teacher-friendly terms. Identify early indicators of these conditions. You'll understand how they affect learning and behaviors. Learn practical strategies to support students in inclusive classroom. Collaborate effectively with parents and specialists. Let us start right away with the first disorder, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, commonly known as ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder marked by a persistent patterns of inattention and/or hyperactivity, impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. It typically begins in childhood and can continue into adulthood. ADHD is a condition where the brain works differently, affecting executive functions like attention, self-control, and organization. To clearly understand what it is and how it affects a child or an adult suffering from ADHD, let us discuss in detail about its symptoms with some practical examples. The symptoms of ADHD fall into two main categories that are inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. It is important to note that a person may present predominantly with symptoms from one category or a combined type. Let us discuss about inattention. This involves difficulty with focus, organization, and sustained attention, such as careless mistake. Here, the child frequently fails to pay close attention to details, resulting in errors in schoolwork and other activities. Trouble concentrating. They have difficulty in sustaining attention for any task or play activities, like lack of concentration during lectures or conversations. Appears not to listen. Often, they seem to be elsewhere, even when spoken to directly. Difficulty following instructions. They are mostly found to be able to start a task but then quickly lose focus or get sidetracked and not complete assignments or duties. Trouble organizing. They have difficulty with time management, keeping materials and belonging in order, and managing multi-step tasks. Avoid mental effort. They are often found to be reluctant or avoid tasks that require sustained mental effort like homework or long forms. Losing things. They frequently lose necessary items like pencil, erasers, books, tools, etc. Easily distracted. Their attention is easily drawn away by external stimuli or unrelated thoughts. Forgetfulness. They are often found to be forgetful in daily activities like chores, errands, or keeping appointments. Here's a case example of a child who has predominantly inattentive presentation, that is ADHD 1. Ben is a quiet, polite 6th grader who excels at subjects he finds inherently interesting, like science fiction. However, his inattention leads to constant struggles with daily tasks and school logistics. Let us take some scenarios of how Ben struggles in school. For example, preparing for a history test. Ben's history teacher, Mr. Harry, handed out a 4-page study material for an upcoming test. Mr. Harry announced that the last page of the study material is not included in the test. However, Ben was distracted by a thought about his new video game. When Ben starts preparing for the test, he spends 2 hours studying the optional material, having missed the key instruction that the main test covered only pages 1 through 3. Next scenario is when Ben is searching for his history notes, he finally realized that the required history material is missing because he left it on the bus 3 days ago and forgot about it. When faced with the difficult task of reviewing the material, Ben would stare blankly at the page instead of reading. He begins to absent-mindedly doodle complex pattern in his notebook for 10 minutes, actively procrastinating on the sustained mental effort. This is an example of a child suffering from ADHD 1. Now let us take a look at a child's carelessness. Now during the actual exams, Ben knows the answer but misses 3 multiple choice questions because he circles the wrong number on the answer sheet or skipped a line entirely. He also writes the date as September 2nd instead of November 2nd on the header, a small unnecessary error resulting from a lack of attention to detail. The next symptom is hyperactivity and impulsivity. This involves excessive movement and difficulty with self-control, such as fidgeting and squirming. The child would often be fidgeting with his or her hand or feet, or they would be squirming in their seat. Trouble staying seated. In situations where remaining seated is expected, example in a classroom, a child with ADHD often has trouble to stay seated in one place. Excessive movement. Here, they are often found to be running about or climbing in situations where it's inappropriate. Trouble with quiet activities. They have difficulty engaging in leisure activities or difficulty to play quietly. Always on the go. Here, they act as if they are driven by a motor or often have a feeling of needing constant motion. Excessive talking. A child with ADHD is often found to be talking too much. Blurting out answers. Sometimes they would finish people's sentences when talking or answering questions before they are fully asked. Difficulty waiting turn. They have trouble waiting for their turn, like standing in a line or during a game. Interrupting or intruding. They would interrupt conversations, games or activities or start to use other things without permissions. Now let us try to look at how can schools help kids suffering from ADHD. Schools are crucial partners in managing a student's ADHD. Help often comes through creating a structured, supportive and predictable learning environment with specific accommodations and interventions. Classroom strategies and accommodations can include structure and routine. Maintain a consistent daily schedule and classroom routines. Provide advance notice of changes to the schedule. Use a visible daily schedule and clear rules or expectations. Instruction and task. Give clear, simple instruction, one at a time, checking for understanding. Example, by asking the student to repeat them. Break down large assignments into smaller, manageable steps. Alternate high concentration tasks with more active or low interest activities. Provide checklists to help the students monitor their own progress. Physical environment. Provide preferential seating, often near the teacher and away from distracting areas like windows, doors, or high traffic zones. Allow the use of non-disruptive fidget tools. Allow for movement breaks or brief structured activities, example like running an errand for the teacher. Academic and testing adjustment. Offer extended time for tests and assignments. Allow the student to take tests in a less distracting environment. Provide notes or graphics. Organize to reduce the need for extensive copying. Behavior and emotional support. Use positive reinforcement frequently, like praise, point systems, or rewards, to acknowledge appropriate behavior and effort. Maintain calm, consistent boundaries and consequences. Teach self-management skills like time planning and emotional regulation. Now, that is all about ADHD. Let us take a look at the next topic for today, that is the specific learning disabilities, also known as SLDs. Specific learning disability are neurological disorders that affect the brain's ability to receive, process, store, and respond to information. These are not caused by low intelligence, poor teaching, or lack of motivation. In fact, most children with SLD have average or above average intelligence. Some common types of SLD include dyslexia, that is difficulty in reading, dysgraphia, difficulty in writing, dyscalculia, difficulties in mathematics, nonverbal learning disorders, issues with visual, spatial and organizational skills. These challenges can exist alone or in combination. SLDs often become more noticeable once the child enters school and academic demands increase. Let us take a look at the first type of SLD, that is dyslexia, a reading disorder. Dyslexia is a specific learning disorder that primarily affects reading and language processing. It involves difficulty with accurate and/or fluent word recognition, decoding, sounding out words, and spellings. These challenges often result from deficit in phonological awareness, that is the ability to recognize and manipulate the sounds of spoken language. Students having dyslexia have symptoms like difficulty in recognizing words, decoding sounds, or reading fluently, trouble with spellings and understanding what is read, slow reading speed. For example, a child reads stop as pots or skip lines when reading aloud. Next, dysgraphia, that is a writing disorder. Dysgraphia is a neurological-based learning disorder that affects a child's ability to write coherently and legibly. It impacts fine motor control, like spelling, and ability to organize thoughts on paper. Symptoms of dysgraphia include poor or inconsistent handwriting, incorrect spacing or letter formation, difficulty organizing written ideas, spelling errors even in familiar words, hand fatigue during writing tasks. For example, a student's handwriting is messy and hard to read. They know the answer but cannot write it clearly or fast enough. Next, dyscalculia or math disorder. Dyscalculia is a specific learning disorder in mathematics. It affects a child's ability to understand numbers, learn math facts, and perform calculations accurately. Children with dyscalculia may have normal intelligence but struggle with mathematical reasoning and memory for numbers. Symptoms of dyscalculia include difficulty in recognizing numbers or mathematical symbols, troubled understanding quantities and patterns, confusion with place, value, time, and sequencing, difficulty reading math facts, example multiplication tables, anxiety and avoidance of math task. Example, a student counts on fingers for simple addition, forgets steps in solving a problem, or confuses 14 as 41. For all these disabilities and disorders, we need one thing to remember: early identification is key. Common indicators include delayed speech or language, difficulty rhyming or recognizing letters, poor memory for sequencing, avoiding reading or writing tasks, inconsistent academic performance. Example, a child may understand a concept when explained verbally but struggles when asked to read it from the board. Some classroom strategies that can be adopted are differentiated instruction. Teachers should try to adjust teaching methods to match the child's learning style. They should also try to avoid long lectures but use visual, hands-on material and repetition. Multi-sensory learning. Teachers should combine sight, sound, movement and touch, like teaching phonics through singing, clapping and tracing. Accommodation and support. If required, extra time can be given during tests. Alternative assessment formats can be given, such as oral presentation, typing instead of writing, and voice recording of answers. Instructions are very important. Therefore, clear step-by-step instruction should be given. Building confidence. To encourage students, teachers can motivate by celebrating every small success. Provide students the opportunities to shine in non-academic areas as well. Teachers should focus on strength as well and not just on weakness. Collaboration. Teachers should work closely with special educators and parents. It is very important and is mandatory to create individualized educational plan, that is the IEPs, with measurable goals. Last, that is the intellectual disability. Now, intellectual disability is a neurodevelopmental condition characterized by significant limitations in intellectual functioning, like reasoning, problem solving, learning. and limitation in adaptive behavior like communication, social skills, daily living. It usually originates before the age of 18. Unlike SLD, children with ID may require more structured and lifelong support. Characteristics of intellectual disability include delayed developmental milestone like walking, talking, or toileting, difficulty understanding complex instructions, slow learning pace, limited vocabulary and communication skills, challenges in daily life living and self-care. For example, a 9-year-old child may still require step-by-step guidance to complete basic self-care tasks. The level of support for ID it include mild ID. They can learn academic skills up to elementary level with support. Moderate ID. They may require functional academics and life skill training. Severe or profound ID. They focus on self-care, daily living and sensory activities. Now let us take a look at how can schools support students with ID. Early intervention and assessment. Teachers' observation plays a critical role. Use screening tools and collaboration with psychologists. Individualized educational plan. In every IEP, it is important to set clearly defined academics, social and behavioral goals. IEP should be reviewed and updated regularly. Inclusive teaching strategies like small group instruction, visual and hands-on materials, frequent checks for understanding, social and emotional support, foster peer acceptance and inclusion, positive reinforcement, build self-esteem and confidence. Next, family and specialist collaboration. Maintain open communication, align school strategies with therapy goals. Children with ADHD, SLD and intellectual disability can learn, but they learn differently. Inclusive education isn't about treating everyone the same, but it's about giving each learner what they need to thrive. Thank you for joining this second session of our CPD series on neurological disorders. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the DERT YouTube channel for more learning resources. Let's continue building classroom where every child belongs and every child matters.